I just found out over the weekend that a good friend of mine passed, and it looks like he died on Thursday. And for those listening, you might have known him, and I'm sorry if this is the way you're hearing it, but it was my friend Mark Bell. He is a poet and an author. He published a number of things, probably most famous, The Hobo Speaks and The Hobo Won't Shut Up, which is a sequel book of poetry that was published actually at the public library. And he and I have been friends probably for 8 years. Back when I was the poverty reporter at the News and Review, I've written about him before. We spent a lot of time together, and he was a good friend of mine. So this, it's really sad. He spent years and years on the streets. He, for a very large amount of that time, lived on the American River, had a very well hidden little home, a tent, and he lived with his 6 cats there, and that was sort of his family. And every morning he would get up and walk all these miles into downtown Sacramento, even though he had messed up knees and one of his thighs was basically, he just had no feeling in it. And he would go around town canning, get cans, end up with about $7 worth at the end of the day, and buy either, cat food or something to keep him warm through the night, a nice drink or something. And so I was kind of, I don't know, surprised by how hard I was hit by this. But he was 58. I do not know much beyond that. There are no details yet. I'll know more as I know more. But I just wanted before the episode to maybe read a poem of his, Skylar, during one of our first episodes. If you remember, I read a piece of his that he'd written about experiencing homelessness on Christmas. So this piece is from a collection he wrote, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. The collection was called Spirit, and the piece is called Storm's End. And it's very short, so here it goes. Spending days awash in a sea of forlorn hope, enduring many sleepless nights with a deep aching in my soul. At the end of the day, I sit and cry aloud, letting all around me know I have a voice, I have a spirit. In the unfamiliar calm, I whisper a prayer of thanks as the last of the rain falls gently upon my heart. And whenever someone passes, I try to think about what is one great quality of theirs that I want to help continue to put out into the world. And for Mark, what I loved about him was that no matter where he was in life, his lot in life, he was going to create, he was going to put out in the world, and he was going to put a dent into the world. He was going to make a difference, and he was for so many people. So for me, I just want to say, especially for all the people fighting the fights that we cover, especially on this show, don't ever let them tell you you're small, because the work you're doing is very important and you are making a difference. So thanks for indulging me, everyone, and thank you, Mark.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard, voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And you have Skylar.
And Shannon.
And you have Flo.
No, it's gonna be one of these episodes.
Shannon looked at us mischievously.
Right.
while
like,
waiting to say her name.
I was like,
Yeah.
fuckers, it's not only me that does that shit. Oh, it's a Monday show. God damn it.
We're off
All right,
to
off to a great
fantastic
start. Off to a great start here.
All right. Tuesday show, folks.
Sorry.
Well, let's just get started. A lot has happened here in Sacramento, and while it's a topic that I particularly don't enjoy discussing, I feel like we have to. A lot's gone on. So let's talk about our dear friend, thick-skinned Gil, the opinion editor at the Sacramento Bee. We mentioned on last Monday's episode a week ago. So this is Gil Week. All right. Welcome to the
actually,
what is the end of Gil Week, folks?
I would like to file like an official movement to rename the week leading up to President's Day Monday as Gil Week from here on in. This is a week in February that we all I think what we should do is, we need to take to Twitter to memorialize this fantastic week that Saint Gil has bestowed upon the people of Sacramento, seen fit to deliver to us.
Yeah, and this is really in celebration of open public discourse and moving the conversation forward.
Right.
It's in celebration of definitely not being mad and in fact laughing a whole lot. You're not
and having
mad
people reach out to tell you that you're doing really good stuff and be real supportive of you.
Yeah.
But having no evidence of those people supporting
Sending
you
texts.
available on the platform that you're telling everyone that you have so much support.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Gil Week is all about definitely for 7 days not being mad at all.
Right.
And telling everyone you're not mad.
Right.
In fact, you're laughing.
Ah.
So Gil, as we know, a couple days after the demonstration outside Mayor Steinberg's house that resulted in some damaged property, as written by the Bee, Gil shrouded himself under the editorial board's byline and wrote an opinion piece basically calling that act terrorism, right? We had Nikki on last week to discuss it. A few days later, Gil is having a nice little repartee on the social medias, fighting with the Twitter left. Thank you for all you do, Twitter left, by the way.
Yeah, you guys
And
are MVPs.
He
The real ones.
rounded off the week by writing another opinion piece, but this time as himself, as thick-skinned Gil. And what did he say in this piece, basically? I mean, he mentions Flo in particular, so Flo, maybe you want to take it away?
Yeah, his take is essentially that not only was what happened at the mayor's house terrible, but that the left is essentially no different than the people who stormed the Capitol and flew Confederate flags and wore 6 million wasn't enough shirts and had hung nooses, hanged nooses. I never know which one I'm supposed to use. And English is hard. And tried to kill people. That and the reason that the left is no different is because we don't view minor property damage as violence. And because we don't view criticizing someone who's an elected official as, inherently problematic, and because we won't immediately drop everything that people were doing, working and volunteering at warming centers and trying to keep people alive and trying to advocate on behalf of the 10,000 people who are experiencing homelessness and the 100,000 people who are, currently experiencing housing insecurity in our region, to address the property damage at the mayor's house, and that we are much more focused on those other things that we've mentioned than we are that, and that we are in support of protest because we think protest has a place in how social change happens. And so for the high crime of wanting to focus on actual social justice issues and the human rights abuses that have taken place because of a lack of policy change or the policies that exist. We are therefore dangerous, left-wing, violent people, and we are shutting down the conversation and bullying people. And he will stoop to great depths to, you know, allege that this is happening and to also use racial tropes to make his point.
Right. Yeah. The next hit piece he's coming out is he's going to try and tie the left in with white supremacy. It appears that at least he wrote that on Twitter the other day.
Yeah.
What's really interesting to me, and we can get deeper into this piece, was that the people he called out publicly on his piece on the largest platform in 100 miles.
Which, by the way, I just want to reiterate, he is using to just like narrate a social media exchange.
Yeah.
And then
Correct.
like put that
One
out
that he
as,
was not
like,
privy to because he is not friends with Katie Maple on Facebook. So he either got screenshots or got somebody else's something, but this is not a Facebook post that he was even privy to. And I said actually on the post that I have no expectation of privacy on the internet, but I do think that there is a difference of no expectation of privacy and also having somebody essentially snoop into exchanges between people who are actual friends and or Facebook friends and then narrate that in the largest publication in 100 miles.
Yeah.
So
right. And
it's
taking it out
incredible.
of context to like make it
Sure.
seem like it was completely different than the exchange actually was.
correct.
So he attacks in his piece, almost everyone named in there is a woman or non-binary femme, most of them of color, most of them private citizens that he has just used this platform to put a microscope on.
Right.
In this piece, I think you can argue that, Flo, you are perhaps public figure. You can argue that in some way, Katie Maple, whose Facebook post this is public. She has filed for an election in the future. And obviously, Katie Valenzuela is an elected official. But it appears that you three are in particular the people that he's attacking. And I don't know what to say. It's just, I have heard stories of Gil's abuse and misogyny in the past. This past week, it has been on full display.
It's like, and you know, I'm not, I guess, that familiar with Gil and his work, but like just this last week of watching him on Twitter, like he got mad because somebody on Twitter, like, you know, brought up like, hey, like, do they, you know, if you require mental health services, like here's a listing or whatever. And he like used that to be like, oh, you're like making fun of people who are, you know, mentally unwell or whatever. But like, without being hyperbolic, and this actually, I don't even really want to say this because it makes it kind of harder for me to disparage him after this, but like this thing that he's been doing the last week does seem like maybe there's like some kind of episodic thing going on, because it's not like he does this all the time, you know? And like, I don't know, like I've been thinking about it, and this is like, we're going, you know, like with the pandemic and like everything that's going on, like I feel like people who are not normally maybe in an area where their mental health is suffering are more in that area. And like, to be 100% honest, I know this isn't like funny and I would rather be just dunking on Gil, but like he might, I don't know. I'm not trying. I really
we don't know.
I'm having a hard time even saying it because I don't want people to think that I'm like just like doing this to be funny. But like it seems
we don't know what he's going through, right?
Right. Exactly. Right.
We don't know what he's going through. It's a hard time for all of us, and we also know that hurt people.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's what I see is a lot of hurt. And I don't want to speculate on what's going on in Gil's life because he's not somebody in mine. And so, but what I do is I see somebody who appears to be hurting people, and it always usually raises a red flag for me of who's hurting you. Because, you know,
Right.
in all of our public health work, we talk about how, you know, when people are feeling frustrated, they often frustrate other people. When people are feeling attacked, they often attack other people. When people are feeling whatever, like the bad behavior often shows up in almost the exact same way that the person is feeling. And so that would not surprise me, because it seems like, you know, he's hurting people right now, and attacking people, and seems to be kind of, you know, indiscriminate about how he's going about this.
Yeah.
And it's surprising for somebody who is a professional in this way, right? To be, I mean, there's a dogged way that he is like going after people, and even kind of divorcing himself from reality in some ways, right? So it's, you know, I mean, I would even say, and I don't know how long this has been going on, but like our exchange, I thought he might still be upset because he put out a lie about the Measure U money and how it was spent. And I just said, you know, as the chair of the committee, I can confirm that that's not true at all. And it was surprising to me that someone who is a journalist wouldn't look up a budget before spreading a lie about how money was spent, right? Like that just seems like journalism 101 is like, make sure your facts and figures are correct. And I mean, we all certainly do it, but it was surprising to me that it was just so, it wasn't like oh, you said 10 million and it was 15. It was like, this never happened. And you're saying that it did. And so
yeah, it's very,
it just raises questions. Yeah. It raised questions about like, what's going on that the opinion editor for the Sacramento Bee wouldn't fact check before putting out a lie.
Right. Well, and it's dangerous for the Sac Bee, right? Because then when he comes out and he says like, oh, well, you know, these, you know, like some of the things that he's printed in the Bee about what the protesters were doing at Daryl's house, like, oh, they were like throwing rocks at the house and, you know, shouting the names of his children or whatever, which is also, side note, Daryl Steinberg's children are adults, and I feel like it's framed in the Sacramento Bee as if there's little kids who are scared in the house, which is not at all the truth.
His children are adults and don't live here.
Right.
I've heard no confirmation of that actually happening.
That's what I was going to get to.
Nikki was there. Nikki said it never happened. Daryl said it did.
And that's bad for the Bee, right? Because you should be able to trust your town's periodical to like do their homework. You should be able to be like, okay, well, if they're printing this, then they have sources and they can back it up. But he's not really doing that. And so now instead of anybody knowing what to think, like somebody who reads that article and then listens to that episode of Voices is treated to a he said, she said situation over this thing, which should not be the case, right?
Right. You know, yeah. But I will say, an intern, I believe, wrote the news story, and then Gil then perpetuated it in the opinion section. That perpetuated this sort of hearsay allegation. Can I say, you know, I honestly, Skylar, I do applaud your direction toward empathy. On the other hand of it, we also have this man who has this very large platform and has, over the course of the 3 years or whatever that he has been the opinion editor, has used it to abuse people. And I'm not sure where we go from there. What do we just keep letting that happen? What is the recourse? And so that's just, and that's something we can explore maybe on later episodes, but that's definitely what I'm starting to think about now, because I know there's some really amazing reporters there. Yes. I also don't want that fact to hinder us from doing any sort of action that needs to be done to stop him from harming people.
Right. I also know that, like, if you're writing for the editor, like if you're writing as an opinion columnist, right, you're going to write opinions that people don't like. So that's par for the course, right? But I do also think the reason why it concerns me is because what I'm experiencing is a lack of professionalism. I have not, shared publicly on my platforms, but I certainly it's not a secret that I submitted a response to this because I was named several times, and that is often a courtesy that is extended to people who have been named in an opinion column. And the exchange that I had in requesting that, I thought merits unprofessionalism, to come from somebody's work email address, and to say, really just kind of disparaging things. The tenor of the conversation just was inappropriate. And there were even like, one of the things he mentioned to me is some mayoral campaign that apparently I'm running that I don't know anything about and have never consented to. And so I find those kind of things like, they raise serious red flags to me about, is this the Sac Bees Nav Gil situation, right? Like, what's happening behind closed doors? If you're very comfortable conversing with your bosses CC'd on an email thread to someone in the community this way, like, to me, that raises the HR red flags all over the place, right? And so this goes beyond just, I don't agree with your opinion. That's fine, but there is still professional decorum, and I don't care what's happened over the last 4 years. Donald Trump doesn't get to lower the bar on how we speak to each other at work. And so that is another concern to me, is like, what kind of working conditions are people under if this is the way that this person comports themselves at work?
Yeah. So you submitted that Friday.
I submitted that on Saturday morning.
Oh, Saturday morning. And you've yet to hear back on if that will be published.
I got all kinds of responses from Gil on Friday when I reached out to get details, but I have not received a response since to the 2 emails I sent, one on Saturday submitting and one on Monday morning, 48 hours later, asking about the status of my submission. So to date, we are at the night of Monday, February 15th, and I have not received a response back from the Sacramento Bee about the opinion piece that I submitted that meets to the letter all of the criteria that I was given, in terms of that I had to specifically address whether or not I thought the violence against Daryl and Julie Steinberg was justified. And I was told that it's a really simple answer. And so I should be able to do that. And I have addressed that, as well as my own, thoughts on the Facebook post and what has happened. And it's under the word count. It has everything that, this person would need. And I have not received a response back yet.
Okay. So stay tuned on that. I will say he does have a history of attacking women on his opinion section, and then after attacking them, when they say it is custom to afford me space to discuss things and defend my character, he has denied them that over and over again. So this is a pattern.
I think to that point, it's really worth reiterating too that he's going after like Katie Valenzuela super hard in a way that he like obviously is not going after anybody else on the council. And it's like, it's clear that there's like an agenda here that he's got against Katie personally. And I don't know. I don't want to speak to like misogyny or racism or any of that, even though I think it's 100% possible that those are motivators for him. I don't know either way with that. But what is clear is that he has a grudge against Katie Valenzuela and is going to use it, based on this as a precedent, is going to use just about any piece of controversy he can to like shine a light on Katie in a way that he thinks is going to be unfavorable. And I don't know, for my money, I think Katie's handled it pretty well so far.
Shannon, you were going to say something.
I think it's important to, well, for me, it's important to remember like where this all started. And like, this is a person who, like all of these outbursts and this like, attacking of name calling, just like aggressive Twitter behavior, is all hinged on somebody who didn't get what they wanted. And what they wanted was for people to come out and say that this thing that happened was violent, right? This thing that happened to their friend was violent, or their acquaintance or whatever. I don't know what he would identify Daryl as to himself, but this person that he knows, this thing happened and that is violent. And people are like, well, we define violence differently because we value people over property. So we will not say that that is violent. And also, protests are intended to cause a stir. You are the person on the other side of the protest is intended to feel uncomfortable. They should be, you know, forced into a space of thinking like, how did this happen? Why are people standing outside of my house chanting or hanging signs or whatever? Like, so Gil didn't get what he wanted, which was for certain folks to say that this thing was violent, and all of a sudden what happens is this outburst, this Twitter tantrum, right? Wherein he has now decided to pit like-minded people against like-minded people who maybe don't have the same tactics, certainly, but like-minded insofar as these are people who like generally are advocating for the rights of people experiencing homelessness and for, you know, housing as a human right. And all of a sudden now we find even like those groups with like infighting. Well, we condemn violence. Well, we don't think it was violent. And so you've got all of these different organizations making statements about what is violence and what isn't. And it's like, this is how you realize like this is a person who is all about power and control and all about getting what they want at whatever cost, right? Like,
Yeah. You know, I think that's all just spot on. I think it's also telling like that the people that he's attacking are the people who are at the warming centers every night. The people that are watching the violence happen against our neighbors every day. I don't know if when you are removed from this violence, you don't know what violence really is. So you think that a broken lamp in the mayor's front yard is violence. And when you say that to us, we say, are you kidding me? Because we're watching it outside every day. My friend died on Thursday, right? Like, this isn't this rhetorical dance of his is just so damaging to the discourse. There's so many pieces he could have written in the time since that happened to help save lives, and he refuses to do it. He continues down on his catty vendetta that serves nobody and serves nothing. And he's got another one coming out this week.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I had so many thoughts as Shannon was talking. The first is that, you know, like I think he did want people to join him, and he's upset that more people didn't. But I think he was successful in some regard, because I certainly saw in the SAC Observer that several of the, you know, over 55 kind of Black leaders came out and disavowed the violence the vandalism. They were very clear about their language. And I saw that, you know, Loaves and Fishes came out with a statement about how they felt about it. So I think that there has now been pressure on these organizations to come out with statements. And so I think that pressure is coming from the fact that Gil has made this an issue and has kind of turned it into a moral litmus test. What I find interesting about this is, you know, we are in February, and February is Black History Month. And Dave, actually, your birthday is the date that 61 years ago, the Greensboro, North Carolina sit-ins happened. And I think about them a lot because, you know, I think about, you know, the way in which that really kind of helped to spur the movement, and the way that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and others were so instrumental in drawing attention. And, you know, one of the things that those folks did was prepare for what might happen when they did these sit-ins, right? And they literally did dress rehearsals so that people could steady their nerves and steady themselves and really understand what was going to happen. And I don't think in the course of retelling those stories 61 years later that anybody would take take the take that the newspapers of the time took, which is, how dare these Negro students, you know, disrupt businesses like this, right? This is disruptive. This is, you know, like, how dare you, right? The people who were complaining about their traffic being blocked when there were protests in Sacramento for Stephon Clark being killed, like, how dare you? But in 60 years, that won't be the conversation. Nobody talks about the traffic anymore. Nobody talks about the disruption of businesses. We're just grateful that people took a stand about human rights abuses. And so it's really interesting to me that right now people are protesting because we have failed to provide protection to our neighbors. And we do that through what I like to call budget violence, because with our inaction, we are harming people. And that's not the hot take of the day is a particularly myopic view, one that we frequently take when we're looking right now, because we protect property, and we protect the property especially of people who have wealth. Because I've never seen any member of the editorial board go after, you know, council members to get statements when encampment sweeps happen, and that is property damage too, is it not? And you know, and you could go after people and say, what is your statement on this? But that doesn't happen. But we're supposed to take this view, and it really shifts the narrative away from what we should be focusing on, which is, why were people protesting in the first place? And instead now we're supposed to be up in arms because they're not doing it the right way. And I would say that anybody who's taking that take of they're not doing it the right way and can't keep focus on the importance of the issues that are being raised in the first place has become victim to this intentional misdirect. Like, this is intentional. This is to get you away from what's actually happening.
Yeah. Can I drive home on your original point that budget violence, it might not sound like it to the viewer or listener, but that is active violence as well.
Yeah.
Because the money that should be going to services and helping people and keeping them fed and sheltered goes to the coercive arm of our government, our police force, that continues to harass and attack and kill people. So this is active violence. And to your second point, I mean, again, spot on. I've had this discussion over and over again with people. We have in our county, on average, a person dying in the streets every 3 days, give or take. Is that right, Shannon?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was every 6, but I don't remember now.
Okay. Well, like 130 or 128 died last year, so it's like every 3.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
about 3.
And so
you're all better at math than me.
So yeah, where are Daryl? I know you called every leader in this city and their mother to put a statement out after what happened 2 weekends ago. Where is your outrage for every one of these deaths? Are you not doing a presser for every one of these deaths? Why not? Why not? And why do you keep trying to focus on you?
I mean, you know, this is that, like, Gil has that tweet that says, please be advised that criticizing political violence is now deemed an offensive act of privilege. And I think there's just so much to say. People in positions of power, people with privilege who have the opportunity to center themselves and center their experiences over the experiences of people who are oppressed and marginalized by our local government, really got to take a step back and think, right? Like the mayor centering himself in this action outside of his home rather than noting, like, what a response could have been, like, yo, that sucked, but also 4+ people died that night and I can replace my lamp, you know, like.
Mm-hmm. It should be noted. Sorry, keep going.
I mean, I know this isn't a unique perspective and it's one that we have said before, but I think it just like thinking about these folks in positions of power with such deep privilege who continue to boost themselves, center themselves, and tamp down the voices, experiences, and issues that are facing people whose lives are actually on the line, whose lives are actually lost by inaction. It's incredibly problematic. And this week-long tantrum that is being thrown by Gil is disgusting.
Yeah. It should be noted, sort of maybe to wrap this up, that Gil Duran, the head of the opinion section at the Bee, and Mary Lynn Valinga, the communications person for Darrell Steinberg, work very closely together. Gil used to work at the state capitol. He was Governor Brown's press guy while Darrell was head of the Senate as Senate pro tem. Mary Lynn Valinga is a former editor at the Bee. We know how closely they work together. I've heard a number of things, and this messaging in tandem together, wielding the daily paper of record to do the mayor's bidding, it's completely an embarrassment.
He was doing this too. Same deal when Measure C failed. Obviously there's a bunch of people at the Bee, Gil included, who never got over Measure A.
Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, Measure A was the strong mayor campaign that Steinberg was pushing last election that got killed. Measure C was the real rent control. Like, it was kind of the culmination of the rent control fight here in Sacramento. It would have put some like actual real rent control protections in place. It also got killed after a pretty aggressive campaign ran against it by real estate interests and helped out by the Bee. And the night that happened, that election night, Gil went on Twitter and was like gloating about how Measure C and like rent control got killed or whatever. And that was the first time for me that I like really like caught wind of like, wait a minute, like this, it doesn't seem totally above board that this guy in this position is doing this, right? Because he's just basically like, he comes out to like dunk on people who were fighting for housing justice, and it's like, all right, man, like I guess you can do that.
Yeah, well, he has a history of fighting against people fighting for housing justice too. He, as the press guy for Governor Jerry Brown, he was very publicly fighting to end redevelopment housing dollars. They succeeded in part where we are today. That's thanks to Gil.
Right. And Gil is worked up about this because in large part because Darrell and the folks around Darrell didn't want rent control. And the folks around Darrell include Gil Duran. And this is why he and Marcos are like still bring up, like, took the earliest opportunity they could to be like, oh, well, if you didn't want unhoused people to die in storms, you should have passed Measure A then, which we talked about on the show, is extremely gross. I'm trying to do this without swearing, and I'm right on the line.
Sweating bullets.
It's extremely gross, you doing this without cursing.
But it is like, keep that in mind when like, especially Gil and Marcus to like a lesser degree, because sometimes Marcus like has cool takes about stuff, and I want to give credit where credit's due. But like these are both people who are like directly involved with Steinberg and like Steinberg's press person, and like that is a thing I think that people should have the context for when they read op-ed pieces that the Bee puts out.
Mm-hmm. They serve the interests of capital.
Well, speaking of serving the interest of capital, I am going to take us in a different direction and use one of my favorite tricks in the Voices tool bag here, which is to Flo, I have questions about coronavirus.
Beautiful seg.
Yeah, thank you.
Some of your best work, Sky.
Love it.
I want to talk about this is an issue that actually does not affect me personally as much, but I know that it is affecting a ton of people, which is schools. And what has happened since coronavirus started, we've been doing schooling from home, a lot of schooling via Zoom. It, like, from my understanding, parents hate it, the kids hate it, the teachers hate it. Everybody hates it. Everybody wishes they could just be doing school normally, but we do have this deadly virus, a viral pandemic. Now, though, it seems like and somebody tell me, it's like somebody who's got a little bit of their ear closer to the ground than I do on this. Tell me if I'm wrong. Newsom is kind of starting to beat the drum on I want to open up public schools and whatnot. And it looks like teachers unions don't agree with him. And it seems like there's now kind of a lot, like a kind of a big kerfuffle and in people who want to see schools opened up, including a lot of people who are high up in government, like the governor of California, versus folks who are saying it's still too dangerous. It's also, I don't know, like, this is also a time, of course, when it feels like every day there's like some new variant or new mutation on the coronavirus, and we don't understand how that will work with the vaccines we're doing currently, and all of this stuff. So I kind of wanted to just get your take on schools, what you think about like what Newsom is doing currently, and maybe if you can weigh in on some of the variant stuff as well.
Sure. So you're absolutely right that, teachers and parents and everybody this is one of the adjustments that has been probably the hardest transition. I think for a lot of folks who had transitioned to working from home, that was a little bit easy, and maybe even got rid of a commute and allowed you to sleep a little later and maybe, keep your workout going and all of those other great things that like came about from it. But schools closures have been one of the pain points, because maybe that was a bonus for work, but now here you are trying to also help your first grader, go through, distance learning, and the social disruption and all of the mental health, mental wellness impacts that has. So the current fight is Newsom wants to, he's basically trying to say, like, if we're going to tie school reopenings to vaccinations, then we just need to go ahead and say to parents, we're not going to reopen it all this school year. But he's basically saying, I don't think we should do that. I think we should come up with a plan, and provided that you're at that threshold where you have, below the number of cases per day that are happening in your area, that we should come up with a plan to be able to reopen. And we should start with the youngest students, because they're the ones most in need of that social connection and those kinds of things. There is a group of parents who agree. And then there's the sort of school board unions, et cetera, that are saying, hold on, this is a labor issue. And if we're not included in the vaccination plan, then we don't think that this makes sense. Especially, because we also have to have testing requirements, right? If we're going to reopen buildings and have people in, and how often that happens. And we currently don't have the funding to be able to do that. And so those are valid pushbacks and concerns. Newsom's response is that they've added teachers to tier 1, but the challenge is that locally, whether or not you're considered to be in tier 1, and tier 1 is for vaccination priority, but locally, whether or not you actually are in tier 1 for vaccination priority is dependent on how your local district decides to prioritize teachers, and also the amount of vaccine on hand, right? And so it's not guaranteed. So here we are asking these workers to go and potentially put themselves at risk. The thing that is not discussed, I think, in all of this is something that I was a little bit frustrated about last year and haven't really spent a lot of time or energy kind of talking about, but since we have this platform, I will. And so I'm not from California. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And when I first got here, one of the first things I noticed is that when I went to school was all inside. So you went in the door in the beginning of the day, and with the exception of maybe recess, you didn't come back outside until the end of the day. And then I got here, and even elementary schools look like college campuses to me, because the door to your school, your classroom opens up to outside, and you walk outside to go to your other classes and to go to the bathroom. And so, because so many campuses are built that way, the question I've been asking is, once we learned more about the virus and realized that being outdoors significantly decreased the risk of transmission, is why aren't we moving some of these classrooms outdoors first, right? In a way that could be safe, and in a way we've always talked about, classrooms doing more than just sedentary education. This seems like a good time to innovate on that theme and actually be able to try some things maybe in person, especially for the students who were most vulnerable to the changes that were happening in terms of disruption socially, as well as in their educational attainment. And I haven't seen much about that conversation. And I'm just like, why? We live in a place where, for the most part, for a good portion of the year, the weather would cooperate with that, and you could do that very reasonably.
Yeah. On rain days, you don't have class.
Right, exactly. They'd be like snow days, right?
Yeah.
And there's a way to be able to do that. I mean, Californians love to heat the outdoors, where Dave and I are from, when it drops below a certain temperature, you just don't eat outside. Here,
oh no, in Green Bay, Wisconsin, we did all of our classes outside in our shorts. Didn't matter what time of year.
Where I'm from, in Pittsburgh, we did not eat outside after a certain month of the year. And then we didn't start eating outside until it warmed up enough. But when I got to California, you all were like, yeah, it's now 50 degrees outside. We'll just bring a heater outside. You can keep dining al fresco. So that's something that I'm just really confused about, and I think could potentially, for a lower cost, address a lot of the concerns that are happening, and could be part of a rollout, and also could be part of how do we keep some of these things in place even after coronavirus is over? Because classrooms weren't always serving all of our students. And there are some ways that we could be more interactive, especially with our younger kids, to be able to help them continue to grow and to learn and to share and all of those things. So that's one thing that I think has not been on the table enough, that I think should be part of the conversation. But I also think that right now we're having this sort of fight back and forth between really exhausted parents, really frustrated teachers and administrators and educational professionals, and then, our elected officials. And I think everybody has a morsel of truth to what they're saying, and also some risks or some considerations that they're willing to gloss over.
Right. Well, I mean, with Newsom in particular, you're watching it happen, and you want him to do the right thing, which is be trepidatious about this and make sure we are taking all the necessary precautions. Doesn't his recall effort play a role in his decision making here, or does it not?
I think until March 17th, we have to consider everything that he does something he's doing with an eye for recall, right? Because he's dangerously close. I hear they're out of money, that I hear there's an infusion of more money coming in from the Republican Party. So I think the Republicans
are getting ready to dump something like $600,000 into it, I think.
And he was 200,000 votes or 200,000 signatures short of what he needed to qualify, late last month. But of course, that doesn't include the error signatures. So you have to have, a margin of error in terms of collecting more. So I don't know how this all plays out. There are a lot of people out there who may not vote for the recall, but would sign a signature to allow it to be on the ballot, right? So the bar, I think, is a lot lower for getting people to sign on than it is to get people to vote for something. So who knows?
Well, the Republicans, the National Republican Party, actually gave money to this campaign, which is kind of interesting, right?
Yep.
Was it 600,000? I know they gave like $250,000, I thought.
That was the figure I had seen. I hadn't seen the 600,000, but I also haven't been tracking the story exactly, so I wasn't sure. And
like Skylar, it sounded like you said they were planning on giving some, so maybe that could be an extra infusion.
Yeah, although I just pulled up this Newsweek just now to look at how many signatures they have, and they're claiming that they have the 1.5 million signatures.
Okay. Yeah.
Betfair has the chances, according to Newsweek, Betfair has the chances of Newsom being recalled at 2-1 right now.
That's interesting. That's going to be an interesting year that we all have to endure. It's again very hard for me to imagine a Republican winning at the end of all of this. It would have to be complete topsy-turvy, just chaos in my book for that to happen, because Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1 in this state, and voting has reflected that in the last 2 decades. But I mean, there's a small part of me that's like sort of chuckling. It's kind of fun to see Newsom squirm.
Yeah, we'll see, honestly.
What is the state of, can you give me like a brief basic overview on the variance in what we know and do not know about what is here nationally, what is here in the state, and do we know anything about how any of them will interact with the vaccines that are currently being administered?
So right now, the vaccine administration is kind of all over the place, in part because we have not gotten the amount of vaccine that we were supposed to. And so a lot of people in the tiers that have been accepted still have not gotten vaccines. And I'm sure all of you have had the experience of having somebody ask you like, so what's going on with the vaccine, or how do I get one, or I think I qualify, but how does all of this work? So that's one of the major challenges. The other challenge is that the most of the places are trying to come up with their vaccine distribution plan. And right now, some of the places, Sac County included, don't even have accurate data on who has been vaccinated. Are there, in terms of geography, in terms of racial and ethnic disparities, like all the data that you would want to have to be able to say, oh, we need to make sure we have, vaccination centers targeted here because we're under vaccinating people here, or we're over vaccinating people there, or whatever the case may be. Like some of those data are right now just missing. So there is a need for I think, for the feds to consider in their next stimulus package, how to get money to schools, how to get money to the locals for distribution, and how to make sure that the language in that is clear so that it doesn't get gobbled up by the sheriff's department or spent on something other than how the money is intended to be spent to be able to mitigate the effects of coronavirus and to be able to help with vaccination and testing efforts. Testing is another thing that's under consideration. On one hand, we should expect over time that testing will likely go down as more people get vaccinated. On the other hand, testing is probably going down a little bit more than we might want testing to go down, given that vaccines are not as widely available as we want. But that also could be reflecting the fact that people aren't taking as high a risk of activities right now. And so therefore are not seeing a need to test because they haven't gone anywhere, they're not experiencing symptoms, and they're not being exposed. So that may be actually a good thing, that we're seeing a drop in just people who have enough risk to need to test, or are planning to engage in a high risk activities and are testing preemptively, right? So that certainly can be a good thing, but that's kind of where we are right now with vaccine. There is hope that we're going to have some more vaccines coming on board pretty soon, but I don't know the date. But as we approach March 1st, I can tell you, I don't think we're all going to be. I think the colleague I was talking to who said March 1st is the day everybody should be able to get a vaccine. I was like, I don't think it's going to happen. And here we are at February 15th, and I feel pretty confident saying we are not 2 weeks away from everybody who wants a vaccine being able to sign up for an appointment.
I am a sweet summer child, and I don't even believe, March 1st.
Right.
Yeah. Gonna be maybe kind of a bumpy few months here for California.
Yes, likely a bumpy few months. I think the more that the weather remains a little bit, on the cooler and rainier side, the less we'll have, people, having gatherings and things like that. I think as the weather starts to warm up, we run the risk of seeing some of that same, spike in cases that we saw last year over the summer because of people wanting to get together.
Skylar, you better bleach out that tub and get that vaccine brewing.
Oh, I got it. I'm aging it now.
Yeah.
Now it's
good.
yeah. It's
Is it
aging
good
in
for-
my bathtub.
It's good for the variants and
Do
all
not
that.
try
though.
this at
Yeah,
home.
the longer I leave it in there, and it just kind of stays. What's the word I'm looking for? Tepid.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the more variants it can combat with ease.
That's great. I'm
Excellent.
really proud of you in your sort of autodidactic spirit and the fact that you're putting so much good into the world.
Yeah.
And I will be among the first in line to take your vaccine, Skylar.
I can't
appreciate
wait.
that, Dave. I agree with
Disclaimer,
everything you just said.
Don't do
You know,
this.
We
Don't try it at home.
a lot of the libs they're back to brunch now. You know, Biden has, you know, he is in office. They trust him fully, and you know, they don't know that this stuff's going to take time. So I'm saying to you, brand it as a, you know, this is President Biden coming through on his efforts, and I think we got something here.
Yeah, I think that's
Put
all
that
they need to
shit in
hear.
a fucking mimosa, and you'll
Yeah,
talk about vaccine rates going up.
hell yeah.
You know what I mean?
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
Now that's an appealing vaccine. That
That's a
is
fantastic
something.
plan. See, that's why this team works so well together. You know.
Mhm.
Correct.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Skylar's the ideas guy.
Ideas.
Shannon and I are like, absolutely, yes, this is correct. And Flo is the professional that really gives us the credence to do these wacky
No, I do
efforts.
She
not.
signs off on all of these things.
I
I
sign off
don't.
on none
Okay.
of these ideas.
I don't administer
She's
a single
shaking her
vaccine
head,
until
yes.
Flo says that
No.
you should definitely let Skylar shoot this into your body.
Flo, I have a
Not-
screenshot of your signature that I just throw on it.
Flo
everything.
is nodding her head enthuosity right now in
no.
agreement with what I'm saying.
Oh my gosh. Don't do anything that Skylar has said. Follow none of Skylar's advice. And if Skylar offers to pull out a knife or do anything in his bathtub or his kitchen with you, run. Okay. That's my best advice.
Well, it's not.
As
I mean,
the
let's not
HR
be too strong,
director.
you know.
As the HR director of the show, what I would like to say is that Flo is wrong. And
Well, that settles
that
that.
settles it. Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon.
That's it. All right.
Yeah,
well,
I'm really glad that we allotted Shannon this level of power
Yeah.
within Voices. This
If
feels
anything,
right.
we should allot her more power.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
oh,
well, she's our attorney, our HR director. I'm not sure what else to do, but we'll find more.
We'll find
roles.
something.
we'll figure it out. We'll
We need
figure
a
it out.
CFO.
I have no liability if you take a Skylar vaccine.
If you take my
Um,
vaccine and are experiencing troubling symptoms, I will
Call
forward
Dr.
you
Flo.
Flo's email address.
don't-
you can ask
don't
her
call
about
me.
it.
If you
Don't
drink a
call me.
mimosa from Skylar's and you end up
You drink
just
one of
urinating out of your asshole for days on end, don't call us.
No. That's a common side effect of the Vaxmosa
It's-
and will
it's part of-
subside within a day.
It'll just
The Vaxmosa comes with like all of these different stages, and the first one is that you're gonna feel like a rumbly in your tumbly.
mhm. You
And
just
then
gotta
you're-
ride that out.
you
Ride that
just got-
wave.
Just
Yeah.
keep on. You just ride it out. Just get a refill.
Stay
re-up.
near facilities.
Yes.
Yes.
But not mine, because that's literally just a couple of feet away from where I make the Vaxmosas.
Mhm.
So-
And you don't want to
so-
mix.
Say more about now. Was there a clinical trial? Who's in your placebo group? I
Yeah,
mean,
the Flow Drug Administration actually approved this at the FDA.
It's the FDA.
It's the
Flo, I don't know if you've heard of them.
it's the
It's the
DFDA.
FDA.
I mean,
Dr.
you might not
Flo's
know
Drug
it, but your
Administration.
signature's right there. You signed off on this.
Oh my
And if
god!
this is how you plan to run your mayoral campaign, don't.
Don't.
Well,
I
so
love it.
say that I was to, like, you know, the Vaxmosa is pretty much ready to roll out. Like, I'm gonna need, once I have it all together, I'm gonna need a solid platform with which to make sure that people know that it's available to them, so that we can distribute my my Biden vaxmoses
I'm not gonna make it.
to the maximum amount of people. I feel like I could use the internet to help me accomplish this, but I'm unclear as to where specifically would be a great place for me to launch this great news that I've saved California from my bathroom once again.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Gil's
Skylar.
Twitter feed. That's where you should go for that. You should go to Gil Duran's Twitter feed to get your Skylar vaccine.
That guy's Twitter feed is like a week and a half of so much for the tolerant left. Okay.
That's true. I'm looking at it right now.
There's a place that not only has just perfect take after perfect take, it also has just a sea of factually accurate scientific information and studies, and where you can find yourself interacting with these perfect scientific studies that are very factual.
Mm-hmm.
That place is called voicesrivercity.com. We've been around. In 3 months, it will have been 4 years.
Incredible.
I can't believe it. We started news and arts coverage back in the beginning. Some really, really fun stuff there. We've done a lot of commentary, and it looks like we're going to be ramping that up in the future too, because we can't trust the one that's out there in the region. And then we also have done the Sac Follows the Money project, which shows you where all the bastards, all the interests of capital are throwing their money into campaigns locally. So we're really proud of the work that we've done there. Obviously, our current iteration is the podcast, which is 2 hours of perfect takes a week. Our Tuesday episodes, of course, are free, but our Friday episodes are for patrons only. But we really want you to listen to it. So if you have as little as $5 a month to give, that's a beer at the bar none of us are going to right now. That's a hot chocolate at the coffee shop you're not going to right now, or maybe you are, but you probably shouldn't. I don't know, not
Don't
yet.
do it.
Maybe take 1 week off the indulgence of that hot chocolate, and for that month, hand it over to Voices River City.
Yeah,
And if you
honestly,
do that,
supporting us financially literally saves lives if you
It
look
does.
at it through that.
Vaxmosas.
So do my Vaxmosas.
And so that's like an episode. That's $1 an extra episode. That's 2 hours a week of perfect takes, as opposed to just the 1 hour a week of perfect takes you're already getting right now. So I highly recommend supporting us. We're just really thankful for our patrons and proud of the stuff we're doing. On top of that, we have a store, voicesrivercity.com/shop. Go check it out. You won't believe what's there. I don't even get to tell you right now. Just go check it out. Anyway, we would like to we have social as well. So we're on Facebook, Voices River City, Twitter @Voices River City, same, and Instagram. We are each personally on Twitter. I am @Unokempa, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
You can find me at Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
I'm Shan N.D. Stevens.
And I am Flojaune, FLOJAUNE.
Well, that is going to wrap us for today. Thank you so much again for listening to the show. If you are out there, we want you to know that we love you. We want you to stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from Gil.